"Sir, you look like me," the little girl told the millionaire. "Then they do a DNA test and discover something terrible. Let me know what you thought of this story, with a rating from 0 to 10 in the comments. And tell me what city you're watching from. I really want to know if you like my story and get to know you better, so please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help." The rain poured down on Stone Creek, North Carolina, with a fury that seemed to want to wash all the precious gems from the Appalachian Mountains. Walter Kendrick, at 58 years old, ran down Main Street trying to escape the storm that had taken the entire city by surprise that March afternoon. His business clothes were already soaked, and he cursed himself for forgetting his umbrella at the mining company office. That was when he stumbled, his feet tangled in something small and soft, making him nearly fall face first onto the wet asphalt. Walter steadied himself and looked down, expecting to find a branch or some debris washed away by the flood. What he saw left him completely paralyzed. A tiny girl, who couldn't have been more than 4 years old, was huddled inside an improvised doghouse made of cardboard boxes and plastic tarps. She was sleeping soundly, hugging 2 little mutts that were shivering from the cold. The rain dripped from all sides of the precarious shelter, but the child seemed not to mind the water soaking her torn clothes. "My God," Walter murmured, instinctively crouching down. It was then that something glinted on the girl's neck, catching his attention almost magnetically. It was a necklace made with a raw, uncut amethyst stone hanging from a leather cord worn by time. Walter felt his heart race. That stone was identical to the one he had worn around his neck since childhood, an heirloom passed down through the Kendrick family for over 100 years. The girl stirred slightly and opened her large, dark eyes, staring at Walter with an expression that mixed fear and curiosity. She had light brown skin, dark curly hair, and delicate features that seemed familiar in a way he couldn't explain. "Sir," she said with a small but clear voice, "you look just like me." The words hit Walter like a bolt of lightning. He looked at the girl's face more closely and felt an inexplicable shiver run down his spine. There was something in those eyes, in the shape of her nose, in the way she tilted her head, that echoed faces he had known forever in old family portraits. "What's your name, little one?" he asked, his voice coming out hoarse. "Lily," she answered, sitting up inside the makeshift house and petting the puppies snuggled beside her. "And they're Bingo and Star. We don't have anywhere to stay anymore." Walter looked around. The rain was still coming down hard, and there were no adults nearby. The street was practically deserted due to the storm, and the girl clearly had nowhere to go. His paternal instincts, long dormant since his own children had grown up and left home, awakened with a surprising urgency. "Where are your parents?" he asked, taking off his wet jacket and offering it for her to cover herself. "I don't have a mommy and daddy," Lily said simply, accepting the jacket and wrapping the puppies in it too. "Grandma Elsie took care of us, but she left a long time ago. She said she was coming back, but she hasn't yet." Walter's heart ached. A 4-year-old child, alone on the street with 2 puppies during a storm. He couldn't just walk away and pretend he hadn't seen anything. But he also couldn't explain the strange connection he felt with this girl, nor the mystery of the identical necklace. "Lily, would you like to come with me? At least until the rain stops," he offered, extending his hand. The girl studied him for a long moment, as if assessing whether she could trust him. Then, to Walter's surprise, she smiled, a smile that completely lit up her rain-streaked face. "Can I bring Bingo and Star?" she asked. "Of course," Walter replied, without even thinking about the consequences. "We'll all go together." Lily gathered the few belongings she had, a worn-out rag doll, a tiny blanket, and a plastic bag with some clothes, and came out of the makeshift house. Walter picked her up, along with the puppies, and ran towards his car parked a few blocks away. During the drive, he couldn't stop thinking about the amethyst necklace dangling from the girl's neck. His family had kept the tradition for generations. Each firstborn received an identical stone when they turned 18, a symbol of the continuity of the Kendrick lineage in Stone Creek. How could a street child have something so specific and meaningful? "Sir," Lily said when they reached the car, "you have a little stone just like mine." Walter almost dropped the car keys. "How do you know that?" "Because mine gets warm when it's near yours," the girl answered naturally, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Walter instinctively touched the necklace under his wet shirt and felt that the stone was indeed warmer than usual. This was impossible. Stones didn't react to each other like that. Or did they? In the car, as he drove towards his house in the city's affluent neighborhood, Walter tried to think of how he would explain the situation to Marlene, his wife. They had been married for 25 years, and she knew his sense of responsibility well. But showing up at home with an unknown child and 2 puppies in the middle of a storm wasn't exactly something that could be easily explained. "Lily," he said, looking in the rearview mirror, "I'm taking you to my house, but I need you to promise me something. Don't talk about the necklace stones to my wife yet, okay? It's our secret for now." The girl nodded seriously. "I can keep secrets. Grandma Elsie always said that some things are just ours until the right time to tell." Those words made Walter shiver again. There was a strange maturity in that child, as if she knew things someone her age shouldn't know. When they arrived at the Kendrick mansion, Marlene met them at the door with an expression of surprise and concern. She was an elegant woman of 52, always impeccably dressed, and the sight of her drenched husband carrying an unknown child and 2 puppies clearly disconcerted her. "Walter, what?" she began. "I found her lost in the storm," he said quickly, a half-truth that made him uncomfortable. "I couldn't leave a child alone on the street in this rain." Marlene observed Lily, who hid shyly behind Walter's legs, still holding the puppies against her chest. The woman's expression softened slightly. "Of course you couldn't," she agreed, though her voice carried a note of caution. "Let's get inside before you all catch pneumonia." That night, after Lily had a warm bath and ate some soup Marlene had prepared, she was settled in the guest room. The puppies were in an improvised basket next to the bed, and the girl finally seemed to relax for the first time since Walter found her. But when he went to say goodnight, Lily did something that left him completely speechless. "Mr. Walter," she said, "Grandma Elsie always made a really yummy peach cobbler. She said it was her family's recipe from a long, long time ago. It was with green peaches, dark brown sugar, and a cinnamon stick. Do you know that recipe?" Walter felt as if the floor had disappeared from under his feet. That was exactly the recipe for the peach cobbler his great-grandmother used to make, a tradition that only members of the Kendrick family knew. It was a recipe that had never been written down, passed only orally from generation to generation, and that his own mother had stopped making decades ago. How could a 4-year-old girl, who had supposedly been raised by a stranger, know something so specific about his family? Walter spent the night awake, pacing in his home office, trying to process what had happened. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lily's face asking about the peach cobbler recipe. That information was impossible. Only 5 people on Earth knew that exact recipe. Him, his brother Oswald, his elderly mother, and his 2 aunts who lived out of state. None of them had had any contact with the girl. Around 5 in the morning, he couldn't stand the uncertainty anymore and decided to go to the guest room to check if Lily was okay. When he silently opened the door, he found the girl awake, sitting by the window watching the garden where the first rays of sun were beginning to appear after the previous night's storm. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked softly, so as not to startle her. Lily turned and smiled. "I slept a little, but I like to watch the sunrise." Grandma Elsie always said that every sunrise is a new gift that life gives us. She seems to have been a very wise person, Walter commented, approaching the window. She was. She taught me many things. She knew old stories, delicious recipes, and always sang a very beautiful song before I went to sleep. Lily paused, fiddling with her amethyst necklace. Mr. Walter, can I tell you a secret? Walter's heart sped up. Of course you can. Grandma Elsie said that one day I would find my real family. She said I would know when it happened because the little stones would recognize each other first. The girl stared at him with her large, serious eyes. I think you're my real family. Before Walter could respond, Marlene's voice echoed down the hall. Walter, are you there? Breakfast is ready. During breakfast, Marlene watched Lily with growing curiosity. The girl ate politely, thanked for everything, and treated the puppies with a kindness that touched the heart. But there was something else that caught Walter's wife's attention. Lily, dear, said Marlene, you have gestures very similar to Walter's. The way you tilt your head when you're thinking, how you hold your cup. It's very curious. Walter almost choked on his coffee. He had noticed it too, but hearing Marlene comment on it made it all more real and frightening. Grandma Elsie always said I took after my family, Lily replied innocently. She said that sometimes people are born similar even without being related. And where did this Grandma Elsie live? Asked Marlene. Her journalistic curiosity, she had worked for years as a reporter before getting married, awakening in the little blue house near the river on the other side of the bridge. But she left a long time ago and never came back. She left a little note saying she was going to take care of some important things and that I had to be brave until she returned. Walter and Marlene looked at each other. A woman had abandoned a 4-year-old child with just a note. It didn't make sense. Do you still have that note? Walter asked. Lily ran to her bag of belongings and returned with a yellowed, crumpled piece of paper. The handwriting was that of an elderly but firm person. My dearest Lily, I need to resolve something very important for our family. Be brave and trust that the stones will guide you to where you belong. I will return when the time is right. With love, Grandma Elsie. How strange, Marlene murmured. And you don't know this lady's full name? She always asked me to just call her Grandma Elsie. But one time I saw a letter in the mail for a Mrs. Hope. When I asked who that was, she got very sad and said it was someone she used to be. Walter felt a chill in his stomach. Hope was a name he knew from the family history, but only vaguely. He remembered whispers among the adults when he was a child, something about an aunt who had gotten into trouble and disappeared from the family decades ago. But he had never paid much attention to those conversations. After breakfast, while Lily played in the garden with the puppies, Walter decided to call his mother Mrs. Eleanor, who at 83 still had a sharp memory for family matters. Mom, do you remember anyone named Hope in our family? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Why are you asking that, son? It's complicated. Can I explain in person? Hope was your great-grandfather Julian's sister, Mrs. Eleanor said in a tense voice. But that name is not to be mentioned in this house. She brought shame to the family and left more than 80 years ago. What kind of shame? Walter, some things from the past should stay in the past. If you're asking about her, you'd better come here today to talk in person. Meanwhile, in the garden, Lily had made a discovery that would leave everyone even more perplexed. Playing with the puppies near a rose bush, she found a small stone buried in the dirt. It was another amethyst, smaller than the one on her necklace, but with very similar characteristics. "Mr. Walter!" she shouted, running towards the house. "The little stone helped me find a little sister." Walter ran out and found Lily holding the small amethyst, which shone with the same intensity as hers. "Where did you find this?" "Over there near the flowers. It was calling my little stone." Lily brought the two stones together, and they seemed to vibrate slightly. "They're friends." Marlene, who had witnessed the scene, was dumbfounded. Walter, that's impossible. Stones don't call each other. But when Walter held the two amethysts together with his own, something extraordinary happened. The three stones emitted a soft light and seemed to warm up at the same time. It was as if they were recognizing each other after decades apart. "My God," he whispered, "this confirms it." "Lily, you need to tell me everything you remember about Grandma Elsie. Every detail, no matter how small." Lily sat on the grass and began to speak. She told of how Hope had raised her in a simple cottage, but one filled with old photographs that she never let Lily see up close. She talked about the stories the woman told, about a rich mining family that lived in the mountains, about old traditions, and about a special necklace that would one day return home. "She always cried when she told those stories," said Lily, "and she always touched a little stone she kept in a box. It looked like mine, but a little different." "Different how?" asked Walter, his heart pounding. "Hers was darker, and it had a crack down the middle. She said it was broken because the family was also broken, but that one day they would both be whole again." Walter instinctively touched his necklace. The Kendrick family stone had been split in half decades ago by his great-grandfather, in a tradition that said half should stay with the main lineage and the other half with the first family member to get lost or separate. He had always thought the other half was gone forever. "Lily, do you know where Grandma Elsie kept her things? Clothes, papers, photographs?" "Yes. She had a special box under the bed. She always said that inside it were our family's secrets." The girl paused, looking sad, but when she left, she took the box with her. At that moment, Marlene came back into the house with a strange expression on her face. "Walter, you need to see something. I was looking for some sheets in the attic and found this." She was holding an old black and white photograph framed in dark wood. The image showed a man Walter recognized as his great-grandfather Julian, next to a young woman who looked to be in her 20s. But what took his breath away was that the woman in the photo was absolutely identical to Lily. The same eyes, the same face shape, the same curly hair. "Where did you find this?" he asked, taking the photo with trembling hands. "It was in an old box along with other family portraits. There's an inscription on the back." Walter turned the photograph over and read aloud, "Julian and Hope Kendrick, 1943. Lily came closer and looked at the photo. "That lady looks like me. Who is she?" Walter looked at the girl, then at the photo, then at his wife. All the pieces of the puzzle were fitting together in a frightening way. Lily wasn't just a lost child he had found by chance in the rain. She was family. She was a Kendrick. "Lily," he said, crouching down to her level, "I think we've discovered who you really are, and I think I know why our little stones recognized each other." But before he could explain, the phone rang. It was Oswald, his younger brother, with news that would change everything again. "Walter, you need to come to the company right now," Oswald said in a tense voice. "An elderly woman showed up here asking for a child named Lily. She says she has something very important to tell about the Kendrick family. And man, she's wearing a necklace with a cracked amethyst." The silence in the car on the way to the mining company was as taut as a rope about to snap. Walter drove with his knuckles white on the steering wheel, while Marlene held Lily's hand in the back seat. The girl seemed to sense the adult's anxiety and remained quiet, just petting Bingo and Star, who they had insisted on bringing along. "Mr. Walter," Lily finally said, "is Grandma Elsie back?" "We don't know yet, little one," he replied, looking in the rearview mirror, "but we're about to find out." The Kendrick Mining headquarters stood imposingly in Stone Creek's commercial center, an 8-story building representing 3 generations of success in the gemstone extraction business. Walter had inherited the company from his father, who had inherited it from his grandfather, in a tradition that had always seemed unquestionable until that morning. Oswald was waiting for them in the lobby, pacing nervously. At 52, he was younger than Walter, but had always been the more pragmatic of the two brothers. When he saw Lily enter holding Marlene's hand, his expression became even more tense. "Walter, we need to talk before you go up," he said, pulling his brother aside. "That woman upstairs. She knows things about our family that shouldn't be known by strangers." "What kind of things?" "She knows the great-grandmother's peach cobbler recipe. She knows about the amethyst necklace tradition. And worse." Oswald lowered his voice even more. "She has documents that prove she was legally married to a member of our family." Walter felt the floor disappear from under his feet. Married? To whom? To Uncle John Peter, our great-grandfather's brother. The one the family always said had died a bachelor in the 1940s. That's impossible. John Peter never married. That's what we thought. Oswald looked nervously at Lily, who was playing with the puppies on the other side of the lobby. "Walter, if these documents are real, this child has legal rights to part of the company, to part of everything we've built." The revelation hit Walter like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just an emotional or family matter. It was a legal issue that could shake the entire financial structure of the Kendricks. "Where is she?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "In my office on the 8th floor. But Walter, she's very sick. She can barely stand." When they went up to Oswald's office, Walter saw a woman of about 75, sitting in an armchair, leaning on a carved wooden cane. She was far too thin, with the sallow skin that indicated serious health problems, but her eyes still shone with a steely determination. Around her neck, she wore a necklace with a cracked amethyst that would fit perfectly with Walter's stone. "Mrs. Hope?" he asked, approaching cautiously. The woman looked up and studied him for a long moment. Then, her face lit up with a weak but genuine smile. "You have Julian's eyes," she said in a hoarse voice, "and John Peter's forehead. You must be Antonio's son, Julian's grandson. I'm Walter Kendrick, Julian's great-grandson, and this is my wife, Marlene. I am Hope Kendrick Santos, John Peter's sister-in-law, your great-grandfather's sister-in-law." She paused, breathing with difficulty, and little Lily's great-grandmother. The silence that followed was deafening. Lily, who had shyly entered the office, ran towards the elderly woman upon recognizing her. "Grandma Elsie, you came back," she cried, hugging the woman tightly. "My little warrior," Hope whispered, stroking the girl's curly hair. "I'm sorry it took so long to come back." Walter watched the scene with conflicting emotions. Lily's evident joy at seeing her caregiver, the fragility of the elderly woman, and the bomb she had just dropped on the entire family structure he knew. "Mrs. Hope," said Marlene, always practical, "you said you have documents. Can we see them?" The woman nodded towards a worn leather folder next to the armchair. Oswald picked it up and began to examine the contents, his expression growing more grave with each paper he read. "Marriage certificate from 1943, he said in a low voice. "John Peter Kendrick and Hope Santos. Registered at the Stone Creek Courthouse." He continued flipping through. "Birth certificate of Mary Eleanor Santos Kendrick, 1944. Daughter of John Peter and Hope. Mary Eleanor was my daughter," Hope explained, her tears beginning to fall. "She died when Lily was only 6 months old. That's when I came to Stone Creek to look for my husband's family, but..." "But what?" asked Walter, though he suspected the answer. "They rejected me. They said John Peter had never married, that I was a gold digger trying to infiltrate the family for money. They sent me away and forbade me from coming back." Oswald continued examining the documents. "There's more here. Birth records, certificates." "Mrs. Hope, you kept all this for 80 years. I kept it because I knew that one day the truth would need to come out. My John Peter made me promise that if anything happened to him, I would find the family so our daughter would have her rights recognized." Hope coughed violently. "When Mary died, I thought about giving up, but then Lily was born, and I saw in her the same family mark." "What mark?" asked Marlene. "The amethyst reacting to other amethysts in the family. John Peter taught me about it. He said it was a gift that only true Kendricks possessed. Lily, who had been quiet throughout the conversation, suddenly spoke up. "Grandma Elsie, why didn't you tell me I was from Mr. Walter's family?" "Because I needed to be sure, my dear. I needed to know if they would accept you or reject me again as they did before." Hope looked directly at Walter. "When I heard you had found Lily in the storm, I knew it was the right time." "How did you know I found her?" Walter asked, confused. "Stone Creek is a small town for those who know where to look for information. I have friends who work in the area where you live. When one of them told me that a businessman had taken a child from the street to his home during the rain, and that the child had curly hair and a stone necklace, I knew it was my Lily." Oswald closed the folder of documents with a sharp snap. "Mrs. Hope, assuming these documents are authentic, it would mean that Lily has legal rights to the family inheritance." "I didn't come here for money," Hope said firmly. "I came here because I'm sick and I don't have much time left. I need to ensure that Lily has a family to take care of her when I no longer can." "How are you sick?" asked Marlene, her voice filled with concern. "Liver cancer. The doctors said I might have a few months." Hope squeezed Lily's hand. "That's why I needed to resolve this now. Lily can't be alone when I'm gone." The revelation fell on everyone like a ton of bricks. Lily, who didn't fully understand the meaning of the illness, just held her great-grandmother's hand tighter. "Grandma Elsie, you're going to get better, right?" she asked in a small voice. "I'll try. My dear, but in the meantime, I need to know if your new family will take good care of you." Walter looked at Marlene, then at Oswald, and finally at Lily. The girl watched him with those big, confident eyes, waiting for an answer that would change the course of her life. "Mrs. Hope," he said finally, "it doesn't matter what these documents prove or don't prove. Lily is already part of our family. She will stay with us, and we will take care of her as if she were our own daughter. And you too," Marlene added, surprising everyone. "If you want, you can come live with us. We have a big house, and Lily needs her great-grandmother nearby." Tears streamed down Hope's wrinkled face. "You would do that? Even after everything our family has been through?" "Especially because of everything our family has been through," Walter replied. "We've wasted too much time living apart." But Oswald wasn't convinced. "Walter, you can't make this decision alone. You need to think about the legal implications, the company, the family assets." "The assets can go to hell," Walter said, with a firmness that surprised even himself. "What matters is that this child has a family. And what if these documents are fake? What if it's all an elaborate hoax?" It was then that Hope did something that silenced all doubts. She took her cracked amethyst necklace from her neck and asked Walter to do the same with his. When the two halves touched, they fit together perfectly, forming a single, complete stone that shone with a soft but undeniable light. "This stone was cracked by my father-in-law when my husband married me," she explained. "One half stayed with the main family, the other with me. John Peter said they would only be reunited when the family was ready to be whole again." Lily clapped her hands in joy. "The little stones are happy. They wanted to be together again." At that moment, looking at the reunited stone, at Lily's radiant smile, and at Hope's tears of gratitude, Walter knew there was no turning back. It didn't matter what Oswald or the rest of the family thought. It didn't matter what legal complications would come. Lily was a Kendrick, and he would do anything to protect her. The news of the discovery spread through the Kendrick family like wildfire. In less than 24 hours, the phone at Walter's house wouldn't stop ringing, and his message box was full of indignant, curious, and a few genuinely concerned relatives. Mrs. Eleanor, Walter's mother, was the first to appear at the door the next morning, accompanied by her two sisters, Aunts Beatrice and Carmen. The three elderly women entered the living room like a tribunal, with expressions ranging from disapproval to shock. Walter what is this story about you bringing a stranger home and saying she's family? Mrs. Eleanor asked bluntly, completely ignoring Lily, who was playing on the rug with the puppies. Mom, sit down and I'll explain everything, Walter said, trying to stay calm. But first, I want you to look at Lily and tell me if you don't see anything familiar about her. The three elderly women observed the girl carefully. Aunt Beatrice was the first to speak, her voice trembling with emotion. My goodness. She looks just like the picture of Hope when she was a child. What Hope? Asked Aunt Carmen, who had always been the most forgetful of the family. The Hope who got involved with that man in the 1940s and brought shame upon us, Mrs. Eleanor said sharply. The one who showed up here saying she had married John Peter and wanting family money. Walter took a deep breath. Mom, Hope didn't want money. She wanted recognition for her daughter, and from the documents I saw yesterday, she really was married to Uncle John Peter. That's impossible, exclaimed Mrs. Eleanor. John Peter died a bachelor. He never married. That's what you told everyone, a weak voice said from the entrance of the living room. Hope was there, leaning on her cane and visibly worse than the day before. Marlene helped her sit in an armchair. The silence that followed was as heavy as lead. The three Kendrick sisters stared at Hope as if they were seeing a ghost. You, whispered Mrs. Eleanor. After all these years, you still have the nerve to show up here. Eleanor, Hope said with dignity, despite her evident weakness, I came here in 1945 with my baby daughter, begging you to acknowledge that John Peter had married me. You threw me out, said I was lying, that I was a gold digger, because you were, shouted Aunt Beatrice. John Peter never told us about any marriage, because you never let him talk about me. Hope's voice gained strength. He told me how the family reacted when they found out he was in a relationship with a black woman. He said you threatened to cut him out of his inheritance if he didn't break up with me. Lily, who had been playing happily until then, began to sense the tension in the room. She approached Hope and climbed into her lap, hugging her great-grandmother with protective force. Grandma Elsie, why are the ladies mad at you? She asked innocently. Aunt Carmen looked at the girl, and her expression softened slightly. Child, none of this is your fault. But your grandmother caused a lot of trouble for our family a long time ago. What kind of trouble? Asked Lily. With that natural curiosity of children, it was Hope who answered, her voice laden with decades of resentment. The trouble was the color of my skin, my dear. Back then, the Kendrick family thought it would be a disgrace to have black relatives. It wasn't just that, protested Mrs. Eleanor. It was the difference in social class. You had no education, no known family. I had love. Hope said simply, and John Peter loved me too. So much so that he married me at a time when it could have cost him everything. Walter, who had remained silent throughout the discussion, finally spoke up. Mom, regardless of what happened in the past, Lily is a 4-year-old child who is not to blame for anything. And from the documents I've seen, she is legally a Kendrick. Documents can be forged, said Oswald, who had arrived during the argument. I've hired a private investigator to verify the authenticity of everything. Do that, Hope said calmly. You can investigate all you want. The truth doesn't change because of an investigation. At that moment, something unexpected happened. Lily, who was sitting on Hope's lap, suddenly got up and walked over to Mrs. Eleanor. The girl stared at her with those large, serious eyes, then held out her small hand. Ma'am, Grandma Elsie taught me that when people are angry, sometimes it's because they're scared or sad. Are you sad? The child's innocent question caught Mrs. Eleanor completely off guard. For a moment, her mask of indignation cracked, revealing a vulnerability she rarely showed. I don't know, child, she answered, surprising everyone by taking Lily's hand. There are many things from the past that are complicated to explain. Grandma Elsie says that things from the past are sometimes sad, But we can make the present and the future happy, Lily said with her childlike wisdom. Do you want to see my puppies? They always make me happy when I'm sad. It was at that moment that Aunt Beatrice began to cry. She talks just like John Peter did when he was little. He was always trying to make people feel better when they were fighting. Don't start with that nonsense, warned Mrs. Eleanor, but her voice had lost its previous harshness. It's not nonsense, exclaimed Aunt Beatrice. Eleanor, look at this child. She has John Peter's eyes, his way of tilting his head. Even her smile is the same. How can you pretend not to see it? The phone rang at that moment, breaking the growing tension. Marlene answered and returned with a worried expression. That was Dr. Mendez from St. Camilla's Hospital, she said. Mrs. Hope, you missed your appointment today. They wanted to know if you're feeling well. What appointment? Asked Walter. Hope lowered her head. I have chemotherapy twice a week. Today was a session, but I thought it was more important to be here settling things for Lily. Grandma Elsie, are you going to get better? Asked Lily, climbing onto her great-grandmother's lap again. I'll try, my dear. Walter stood up abruptly. I won't accept this. I'm taking you to the hospital right now. Marlene, can you stay with Lily? You don't have to bother, said Hope. I've already missed today's appointment anyway. Then we'll reschedule for tomorrow, and I'll pay for a private health plan for you to get the best treatment available. Walter, Oswald said in a warning tone, you can't go around making financial promises without thinking about the consequences. What consequences? It's a member of our family who is sick. A person who might not be our family, Oswald corrected, until we prove these documents are real. It was then that Hope did something that completely changed the course of the discussion. She opened her old purse and took out a small leather-bound notebook, yellowed with time. If you want proof, she said, this notebook has everything recorded. All the dates, all the events, all the conversations I had with John Peter about you. She opened the notebook to a specific page. It says here that on March 15th, 1943, John Peter told me about the peach cobbler recipe his mother, Mrs. Rose, used to make. He said she used green peaches, dark brown sugar, a cinnamon stick, and a pinch of clove that was the family secret. Mrs. Eleanor turned pale. How do you know about the clove? Because my husband told me, just as he told me about the amethyst tradition, about the secret place where his father buried the stones that weren't good enough to sell, about the scar your grandfather Julian had on his left hand from a mining accident. One by one, Hope revealed intimate details of the Kendrick family's history that only someone very close could know. Details that not even Walter knew, but that Mrs. Eleanor confirmed with increasingly shocked expressions. My God, Aunt Carmen finally whispered. She really knew John Peter. She knew our family. Of course I knew him, Hope said, closing the notebook, because he was my husband, the father of my daughter and little Lily's grandfather. And for 80 years I kept this information, waiting for the day the truth could be known. Lily, who had followed the whole conversation without fully understanding, suddenly smiled and said, So does this mean I have a really big family now, with lots of grandmas and uncles? The child's pure and hopeful smile was like a ray of light in a room full of old shadows. One by one, the people present began to look at her, not as a threat or a problem, but as what she really was, a child who just wanted to belong somewhere. But the tender moment was interrupted when Oswald received a call on his cell phone. His expression grew more and more grave as the conversation progressed. That was my lawyer, he said when he hung up. Someone is already questioning Lily's legitimacy in the family. We've received a court summons challenging any right she has to the Kendrick estate. Who would do such a thing? Asked Marlene. Oswald looked directly at Walter. Your cousin Reginald. He heard the story and is claiming it's all a hoax to take part of the family inheritance. The court summons arrived the next morning, delivered by an officer who interrupted the family's breakfast. Walter read the document with an increasingly dark expression, while Lily ate her pancakes cheerfully, unaware of the storm brewing around her. Action to contest paternity and challenge succession rights, Walter read aloud. Reginald is demanding mandatory DNA tests and a preventive freezing of all family assets until the hoax, those are his words, of Lily's connection to our family is proven. Marlene stopped eating. Can he do that? Technically, yes, answered Oswald, who had arrived early to discuss the legal situation. As a direct heir, he has the right to question the inclusion of new members in the line of succession. Hope, who was weaker that morning, shook her head sadly. This is exactly what I feared. Greed speaking louder than family. Grandma Elsie, why is everyone so serious today? Asked Lily, looking around the table with her big, curious eyes. Because some people don't believe you're part of our family, my dear. Marlene explained gently. But you don't need to worry about that. But I am family. The little stones recognized each other, Lily protested, touching her amethyst necklace. It was at that moment that Walter made a decision that would change everything. Fine. If Reginald wants scientific proof, we'll give him scientific proof. I'll hire the best genetics lab in the country to do the tests. Walter, that could be expensive, Oswald warned. And what if the results aren't what we expect? Then we'll face the consequences. But I'm sure of what we'll discover. 3 days later, at the most reputable lab in Raleigh, Walter, Lily, and Hope underwent DNA testing. The girl found the saliva collection process fun, turning it all into a game while the adults carried the weight of anxiety. When will we know the result? Hope asked the technician. In a week, Mum, but since it's a legal case, the results will be delivered directly to the court. During that week of waiting, something unexpected happened that changed the whole family's perspective on Lily. The girl, who until then had been a sweet but reserved presence, began to demonstrate skills that left everyone perplexed. It all started when Mrs. Eleanor came to visit her adoptive granddaughter, for that was how she had begun to think of Lily, and brought a box of old family photographs. Lily looked at the images with fascination, but when she came to a photo from 1940 showing the mine in its early days, she pointed to a specific area of the image. Grandma Eleanor, why did you stop digging for stones in that place? She asked, indicating an area in the corner of the photo. Mrs. Eleanor was taken aback. How do you know we stopped digging there? Grandma Elsie told me. She said that Grandpa John Peter told her that place had a very good vein of amethysts. But you stopped working there because there was an accident. What accident? Asked Walter, who had never heard this story. A small cave-in, explained Hope, who was resting on the sofa. John Peter told me his father decided to close that area after a worker almost got hurt. He said the family always prioritized safety over profits. That's true, confirmed Mrs. Eleanor, impressed. But how can she know about an accident that happened before she was even born? Because my John Peter told me everything about his family, Hope said with pride. He wanted me to know the history of the Kendricks, even though he knew you wouldn't accept me. But the surprises didn't stop there. The next day, when Walter took Lily to visit the mining facilities, the girl made an observation that left all the employees speechless. Mr. Walter, why is that big machine making a different noise? She asked, pointing to one of the extraction machines. The area supervisor, Mr. Benedict, who had worked at the company for 30 years, came closer to listen better. Girl, what different noise? There's a higher-pitched sound mixed with the normal sound. It sounds like something is loose inside. Mister. Benedict ordered an immediate check of the machine and discovered that a part had come loose and was about to cause a serious breakdown that could have resulted in thousands of dollars in damages. How can a 4-year-old child notice something that not even my technicians did? He asked, impressed. Maybe it's family intuition, Walter commented, increasingly convinced that Lily truly carried in her blood the mining instinct that characterized the Kendricks. The situation became even more intriguing when, that afternoon, Lily was playing in the backyard of the house and suddenly started digging a hole in the ground near a fig tree. "Lily, what are you doing?" asked Marlene. "There's a little stone buried here. It's calling mine." The girl replied, continuing to dig with a toy shovel. Walter approached initially to scold the girl for dirtying the garden, but stopped when she pulled a small, raw amethyst from the earth, similar to those found in the family's mines. "How did you know there was a stone buried there?" he asked, increasingly haunted. "I feel where they are," Lily said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Grandma Elsie said it's a gift that some people in our family have." Hope, who had observed the whole scene from the porch, smiled with satisfaction. John Peter had the same ability. He could locate amethyst veins just by walking on the land. That's how your family discovered the best deposits in the region. This revelation left Walter in a state of shock. His great-grandfather had indeed been famous in the family for his almost supernatural ability to find amethysts, a skill that none of the direct descendants had inherited. Seeing Lily demonstrate the same gift was stronger evidence than any DNA test, but not everything was going well. Hope's health had deteriorated significantly during the week of waiting for the test results. The chemotherapy sessions, which Walter had insisted on funding at the best hospital in the region, were not having the expected effect. "Doctor, what's the real prognosis?" Walter asked Dr. Maurice Penn, the oncologist in charge of Hope's treatment. "Mr. Walter, I'll be honest. The cancer is very advanced. With treatment, she might have a few months, maybe a year. Without treatment..." The doctor paused significantly. "Weeks." "Then we'll continue with the treatment," Walter said determinedly. "Of course. But there's another important factor here. Mrs. Hope is fighting the disease with a strength that goes beyond the physical. She has a very strong emotional reason to want to stay alive." Lily. Exactly. The love she feels for this child is literally keeping her alive. But that also means that any instability in the girl's situation could drastically affect Hope's condition. This information brought additional pressure on Walter. It wasn't just a matter of resolving Lily's legal situation, it was a matter of life and death for Hope. On Friday of that week, two simultaneous events changed everything again. First, the DNA test results arrived. Second, Reginald Kendrick appeared in person at Walter's house, accompanied by a lawyer and two private investigators. "Walter, I came here because I heard the results have arrived," said Reginald, a 45-year-old man with a haughty appearance and a calculating gaze. "And also because I need to see for myself this child who is causing so much commotion in the family." Lily was in the yard playing with Bingo and Star when she saw the strange men entering the house. Instinctively, she ran inside and hid behind Marlene. "So this is the supposed heiress," said Reginald, observing Lily coldly. "I don't see any resemblance to the family." "Maybe because you don't want to see it," Walter replied, holding the sealed envelope with the test results. "Let's open this and end this farce," said Reginald's lawyer. With trembling hands, Walter opened the envelope and took out the official document. He read it in silence first, his expression gradually changing. Then he looked at everyone present and announced, 99, 7% genetic compatibility. Lily Santos is the great-granddaughter of Julian Kendrick and the great-great-granddaughter of the family's founding patriarch. The silence that followed was deafening. Reginald turned pale, the lawyer swallowed hard, and Hope began to cry with relief. But it was then that one of the private investigators spoke up. "Mr. Reginald, there's something you need to know. During our investigation, we found evidence that this is not the only child descended from John Peter Kendrick who may have rights to the inheritance." The investigator's revelation left the entire room in a state of shock. Hope, who was sitting in a nearby armchair, turned visibly pale and began to tremble. "What other children?" asked Walter, feeling as if the floor was crumbling beneath his feet. The investigator, a middle-aged man named Dr. August Ferrer, opened a folder and spread documents on the coffee table. During our investigation into the authenticity of Mrs. Hope's documents, we found records that John Peter Kendrick had other relationships before his marriage. "That's a lie," exclaimed Hope, trying to get up from the armchair. "John Peter told me about his whole life." "Ma'am, with all due respect, but men don't always tell the whole truth to their wives," the investigator said coldly. "We found evidence that he had a relationship with a woman named Teresa Silva in 1941, 2 years before he married you." Marlene held Lily's hand tighter, feeling the tension grow in the room. The girl realized something serious was happening, but didn't understand exactly what. "So what?" asked Oswald. "Relationships before marriage don't generate succession rights." "Ah, but this relationship produced a son," continued Dr. Ferrer, "a boy named Joseph Peter Smith, born in 1942. And this Joseph Peter had children, who had children, and so on." Reginald perked up at the information. "Does this mean there are other descendants of John Peter with rights equal to this girl's?" "Potentially, yes. We found at least 3 of Joseph Peter Smith's grandchildren still alive in the Teofilo Otoni area." Hope began to cry, not from sadness, but from a rage that had been bottled up for decades. "You're trying everything to disqualify my great-granddaughter. It doesn't matter how many other relatives exist. It doesn't change the fact that Lily is a legitimate Kendrick." "No one is questioning that," said Reginald's lawyer. "But if there are other heirs with equal rights, the division of the inheritance becomes much more complex." It was then that Lily, who had remained silent throughout the discussion, spoke up in a way that surprised everyone. She let go of Marlene's hand, walked to the center of the room, and said with impressive clarity, "I don't want an inheritance. I just want my family." The silence that followed was absolute. The simplicity and sincerity of the child's declaration exposed the pettiness of the whole discussion about money and property. "Lily, dear," said Walter, crouching beside her, "you don't need to worry about these adult things." "But I understand," she said, her large eyes fixed on the uncle she had just met. "That man over there doesn't like me because he thinks I want to steal the family's things. But I don't want to steal anything. I just wanted to have a family that loved me." Reginald, confronted by the child's brutal honesty, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Girl, it's nothing personal against you. It's just that you're afraid to share," Hope completed, her voice laden with decades of hurt. "It's exactly the same thing that happened to me 80 years ago. The Kendrick family has always preferred money to people." "That's not true," protested Mrs. Eleanor, who had arrived during the discussion and heard the last words. "We are not greedy people." "Then prove it," Hope challenged. "Accept Lily as part of the family, without questioning rights or inheritances. Love her for who she is, not for what she might represent financially." At that moment, something unexpected happened. Lily walked over to Reginald, who was watching her with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion, and held out her small hand. "Sir, do you want to be my real uncle?" she asked. "You don't have to give me anything. I just want you to think I'm cool." The child's direct and innocent question hit Reginald hard. He looked at that small girl with her big, hopeful eyes, and for the first time since he had learned of her existence, he saw her as a real person, not as a financial threat. I don't know what to say," he murmured. "You can say yes," Lily suggested with a shy smile. "I'm pretty cool. I can even teach you how to find little stones in the yard." Before Reginald could answer, Dr. Ferrer interrupted the moment with more devastating revelations. "There's something else you need to know. During our investigation, we discovered that Mrs. Hope did not leave Stone Creek voluntarily in 1945. "What do you mean?" asked Walter. "She was practically run out of town. There was social pressure, threats, and even attempts at physical intimidation. Some influential people at the time didn't want a black woman claiming rights to one of the richest families in the region. Hope closed her eyes, the painful memories flooding back. I never told Lily this. I didn't want her to know what I had to go through. What kind of pressure? Asked Marlene, horrified. Threats to burn my house, to falsely accuse me of crimes, to harm my baby daughter, Hope said, her voice trembling. I was forced to leave town in the middle of the night, taking only the clothes on my back and the documents that proved my marriage. Mrs. Eleanor turned pale. Hope, we didn't know that. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. It was easier to believe I was a gold digger than to accept that John Peter really loved me. Lily, sensing her great-grandmother's suffering, climbed onto Hope's lap and hugged her tightly. Grandma Elsie, you're the bravest person I know, and you, my little warrior, are the reason it was all worth it. It was at that moment that Aunt Beatrice, who had remained silent throughout the discussion, spoke up with a revelation that would change everything again. Hope, there's something you need to know about John Peter, something we've hidden from the family all these years. What else have you hidden? Asked Hope, tired of revelations. John Peter didn't die in 1944, as we always said. He died in 1946, 2 years after you left. The silence that followed was sepulchral. Hope looked at Aunt Beatrice as if she hadn't understood the words. What do you mean he died in 1946? After you left, John Peter was desperate. He tried to find you for months, but couldn't find any trace of you. He started drinking, stopped working, and fell into a deep depression. Aunt Beatrice wiped tears from her eyes. In the end, he died of sadness. Literally. The doctor said it was cardiac arrest, but we knew it was a broken heart. Hope began to sob convulsively. You lied to me for 80 years. You made me believe he had died before he knew about my daughter. We lied to protect the family, said Mrs. Eleanor, but her voice sounded weak and full of guilt. Protect from what? From love? From the truth? From the scandal? From the shame? At the time, things were different. Things were different because people like you made them different, shouted Hope with a strength that surprised everyone, considering her health. Lily, frightened by the heated discussion, began to cry. Immediately, all attention turned to her, and the tone of the conversation softened. I'm sorry, my dear, said Hope, calming the girl. Grandma didn't mean to scare you. Why is everyone angry? Asked Lily between sobs. Because sometimes adults do wrong things and then take a long time to admit it, explained Walter, sitting next to them. But it's not your fault, and you don't need to worry. At that moment, Dr. Ferrer made his final revelation, the most shocking of all. There's one final thing we discovered during the investigation. The original will of Julian Kendrick, Walter's grandfather, specifically mentions that any legitimate descendant of John Peter should receive an equal share of the inheritance, regardless of color, social class, or circumstances of birth. That's impossible, said Oswald. I've never seen that will, because it was hidden, replaced by an edited version that omitted that clause. The original will is filed at the courthouse under a special classification that was only discovered during our detailed investigation. Reginald turned livid. Does that mean? It means that Lily, and potentially the other descendants of John Peter, have a legal right to a significant portion of the entire Kendrick family estate. Not as a favor or belated recognition, but as a right established by the founder of the family fortune himself. The final revelation fell on everyone like a bomb. For 80 years, the family had hidden not only the existence of Hope and her descendants, but also the express will of the family patriarch that all his great-grandchildren be treated equally. But it was Lily who, once again, brought perspective to the complex situation. She looked around the room, seeing all the adults in a state of shock, and asked a question that summed it all up. Does this mean I can call all of you family now without anyone getting mad? The weeks following the revelations were the most turbulent in the recent history of the Kendrick family. The discovery of Julian's original will had turned everything they thought they knew about their own inheritance upside down, and the legal implications were devastating. Oswald had hired 3 different lawyers to handle the situation, and they all came to the same conclusion. If the will was validated by the courts, the distribution of the family inheritance would have to be completely reorganized. Not only would Lily have rights, but potentially dozens of other descendants who didn't even know of their connection to the Kendricks. "The situation is out of control," Oswald said during a tense family meeting in Walter's dining room. "If this will is recognized, we could lose majority control of the mining company. Everything our father and grandfather worked for could be dispersed among people we don't even know." "And what's the alternative?" asked Walter, exhausted by the constant pressure of the past weeks. "To keep lying, to keep denying legitimate rights. The alternative is to protect what's ours," exclaimed Reginald, who had become increasingly aggressive as he realized his own financial future was at risk. "This child may be cute, but she represents an existential threat to our family." Lily was playing in the yard with Bingo and Star when she heard the raised voices coming from inside the house. In recent days, she had noticed that the adults were always worried, always whispering among themselves, always stopping their conversations when she approached. The 4-year-old girl didn't fully understand what was happening, but she knew she was at the center of some big problem. "Grandma Elsie," she said, approaching Hope, who was resting on the porch. "Why doesn't Uncle Reginald like me?" Hope, who had lost even more weight in recent weeks due to the stress and progression of the disease, hugged her great-granddaughter with the strength she had left. "It's not that he doesn't like you, my dear. It's that he's scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that things will change. Sometimes adults get so used to life being one way that they're afraid when something new comes along." Lily thought about this for a moment. "But changes are sometimes good, aren't they? Like when I moved from the little house on the street to Uncle Walter's house. That was a good change. You are very wise, my little warrior." That night, the situation reached a new level of tension when Marlene found Walter in his office, bent over a mountain of legal papers with an expression of defeat she had never seen before. "Walter, you need to stop this. You're killing yourself with worry. Marlene, if we lose this case, we lose everything. The company, the house, the savings. Everything might have to be divided among people we don't even know." "So what?" Walter looked at his wife as if she had said something absurd. "What do you mean, so what? Walter, when you brought Lily home that rainy night, was it because of the family fortune? When you decided to take care of Hope, were you thinking about the mining company? Of course not, but then why does it matter now?" Marlene sat on the edge of the desk. "This girl changed our lives for the better. She brought us a joy we hadn't felt in years. If the price for that is sharing an inheritance with other people who also have a right to it, then so be it. You don't understand. It's not just about us. It's about the company's employees, about the responsibilities we have. Or is it about the wounded pride of admitting that your family committed terrible injustices for decades?" Marlene's words hit Walter hard because they touched on a truth he had been trying to avoid. Part of his resistance wasn't about money or responsibilities. It was about admitting that his family had built its wealth at the cost of denying legitimate rights to other people. The next morning, things got even worse when Dr. Ferrer brought news about John Peter's other descendants. He had located Joseph Peter Smith's 3 grandchildren, and all had shown interest in learning more about their possible connection to the Kendricks. "Where do they live?" asked Oswald. 2 in Teofilo Otoni, 1 in Raleigh. They're simple people. One is a mechanic, another works in a shop, the third is a teacher. But when they heard about the possibility of having rights to an inheritance, they became very interested. And what do they want? For now, just to meet the family and better understand their origins. but if their lawyers find out the real value of the Kendrick estate. Oswald didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood the implications. It was then that Hope made a proposal that surprised everyone. I want to meet these other descendants of John Peter. Mrs. Hope, you're in no condition to travel, said Walter, worried about her increasingly frail health. I'm not talking about traveling. Bring them here. I want to look into the eyes of my husband's other great-grandchildren and know what kind of people they are. For what? Asked Reginald suspiciously. Because if we're going to be a family, I need to know if they are good people. Lily deserves to grow up surrounded by good people, not opportunists. Hope's idea, as risky as it seemed, made sense. If there was really going to be a redistribution of the family inheritance, it was better to know the beneficiaries personally than to fight them in court. A week later, Joseph Peter Smith's 3 descendants arrived in Stone Creek. Robert Smith, 32, a mechanic, Carla Smith, 28, a saleswoman, and Professor Martin Smith, 40, who taught at a public school in Raleigh. The meeting took place in the living room of Walter's house on a sunny Saturday afternoon. Lily was playing in the yard when the visitors arrived, oblivious to the importance of that meeting for her future. "So you are John Peter's other great-grandchildren," said Hope, studying each of the 3 carefully. "We're still trying to understand all of this." "Admitted, Professor Martin. Our grandfather Joseph Peter never talked much about his father's family. We only knew he came from a wealthy family in Stone Creek." "And you never tried to contact the Kendricks before?" asked Walter. "Our grandfather said his father's family didn't want anything to do with us," explained Carla, "that they thought we were inferior people for being poor and mixed race." The sincerity of the answer embarrassed all the Kendricks present. Robert Smith added, "When we heard there might be an inheritance involved, we thought it was worth trying to understand our origins better, but we didn't come here to cause trouble." "What kind of lives do you have?" asked Hope directly. "Hard work, financial problems, but we're honest people," answered Professor Martin. "I teach underprivileged children, Robert has his auto shop, and Carla is studying to go to college at night." It was at this moment that Lily entered the room, having been called by Marlene to meet the visitors. When she saw the 3 strangers, she hid behind Hope's skirt, watching them with curiosity. "This is Lily," Hope said with pride, "my great-granddaughter." Carla bent down to be at the girl's level. "Hi, Lily. You're very pretty. We're your distant cousins." Lily studied Carla's face for a moment, then looked at Robert and Professor Martin. Something in her expression changed, as if she was recognizing something familiar in them. "You have the same eyes as me," she said finally. It was true. The 3 Smiths had the same dark, expressive eyes that characterized Lily, the same facial structure that echoed the Kendrick features. "It's impressive," murmured Walter. "The family resemblance is undeniable." What happened next surprised everyone. Instead of being intimidated by the strangers, Lily gradually opened up to them, especially to Carla, who had a natural maternal nature. Soon she was showing them her drawings, introducing Bingo and Star, and telling them about her adventures in the new house. "She's a special child," commented Professor Martin to Hope. "She has a very positive energy. She's been through a lot of suffering, but she never lost the ability to love," answered Hope. "That's what I wanted to see in you, if you would have the same capacity to protect and love this girl." Robert, who had remained more reserved, finally spoke up. "Mrs. Hope, we didn't come here to compete with Lily for anything. If there are rights involved, they are hers too. But we want to be part of the family, if you'll have us." "And if there's no inheritance at all?" asked Hope, testing his true intentions. "Then at least we know our family history and gained an adorable cousin," answered Carla, smiling at Lily. It was at this moment that Reginald, who had observed the entire interaction with growing discomfort, exploded. "This is all very beautiful and touching, but you don't understand what's at stake here. If the will is validated and you claim your rights, The family could lose control of everything. And what do you suggest? Asked Professor Martin calmly. That you accept a fixed sum, a settlement, and waive any claim to the company or properties. The silence that followed was tense. The three Smiths looked at each other, clearly considering the offer. It was then that Lily, who had been playing on the floor during the conversation, stood up and asked a question that changed everything. Uncle Reginald, why don't you want to share? My mommy always said that sharing makes things taste better. The innocence of the question exposed the pettiness of the situation in a way no adult argument could. The days following the meeting with the other descendants brought an unexpected transformation in the family dynamic. Against all of Reginald and Oswald's expectations, Robert, Carla, and Professor Martin did not run to lawyers or start making immediate financial demands. Instead, they just asked to spend more time getting to know Lily and understanding the family's history. Carla was the one who established the strongest connection with the girl. As a saleswoman in a children's clothing store, she had a natural knack with children, and Lily quickly became attached to the cousin she had just discovered. They would spend hours playing in the yard, with Carla teaching Lily how to make colorful bracelets, and Lily showing her cousin how to talk to Bingo and Star. Carla, do you have children? Lily asked one afternoon while they were drawing together. Not yet, little one, but I always wanted to have a little girl just like you. Why don't you have one then? The innocent question touched a raw nerve. Carla had tried to have children during her 5-year marriage, but could never get pregnant. The failure to start a family had been one of the factors leading to her recent divorce. Sometimes things don't happen when we want them to, Carla explained gently. But maybe I've found a special little cousin who can teach me about being a good aunt. The answer satisfied Lily, who hugged Carla tightly. You're going to be the best aunt in the world. Meanwhile, Professor Martin had impressed Walter with his knowledge of education and child development. During a conversation in the office, he made observations about Lily that showed a deep understanding of child psychology. She is a resilient child, but she carries traumas that will need specialized attention, he said. The way she relates to adults shows that she learned to read signs of danger very early on. It's a survival mechanism. We are arranging for psychological counseling, said Walter. That's important, but it's not just that. She needs stability, routine, and above all, she needs to know that she won't be abandoned again. The fear of abandonment is what I see most in children who have gone through what she has. The conversation made Walter reflect on something that had been bothering him for weeks. Since the arrival of the other descendants, he noticed that Lily sometimes became quiet and observant, as if trying to understand if her position in the family was secure. Robert, for his part, had connected with Lily in a different way. As a mechanic, he had skillful hands and the patience to teach practical things. One afternoon, he taught Lily how to fix Bingo's doghouse, which had broken during a windstorm. Uncle Robert, said Lily, focused on holding a small tool. Do you know how to work with little stones too? No, little one. I only know how to work with cars and machines. Why? Because I know how to find special little stones. Grandma Elsie said it's a gift from our family. Robert looked at the girl with curiosity. What kind of gift? Lily stood up and walked to an area of the yard she had never explored before. She closed her eyes, as if listening to something only she could perceive, and then began to dig with a small shovel. Here, she said simply. Robert, skeptical but curious, helped her dig. To his surprise, they found a small amethyst buried just a few inches below the surface. How did you know there was a stone here? He asked, impressed. I feel where they are. It's like they called to me. This ability of Lily's had begun to attract wider attention. Walter had discreetly taken some of the stones she found to be evaluated by a gemologist, and all were high-quality amethysts, some with significant commercial value. It's impossible, the gemologist had said. These stones are of exceptional quality. Where are you finding them? My niece finds them in the backyard of our house. Is your backyard in a mining area? No, it's a residential property in the middle of the city. The gemologist shook his head, perplexed. This defies any geological explanation, I know. But there were more urgent problems to solve. Hope's health had deteriorated significantly, and the doctors had been clear. She had weeks, maybe only days. The willpower that kept her alive was running out as she saw Lily safe and surrounded by family. "Walter," she said one morning, when he went to visit her in the room they had prepared for her in the house, "I need to ask you something very important." "Of course, Mrs. Hope. What do you need?" "When I'm gone, I want Lily to know the whole truth about our family. About the love John Peter and I had. About the hardships we went through. About why I fought so hard for her to have a family. She will know everything. And I want her to understand that she belongs here, that it's not a favor or charity. She is a Kendrick by right, by love, by destiny. I promise." Hope held Walter's hand with what little strength she had left. "There's one thing I haven't told you yet. Something John Peter taught me about the family. What is it? The amethysts you find that you've always found are not just precious stones. They are like a family compass. They always point to where true love is." Walter frowned. "I don't understand. Lily doesn't find stones randomly. She finds stones where there is genuine love for her. Every place where she found an amethyst is a place where someone truly loves her." The revelation made Walter rethink all the places where Lily had found stones. In his backyard, in the area of the mine where he worked, in Mrs. Eleanor's garden during a visit, in Professor Martin's backyard when they visited him. "That's why she never found stones at Reginald's house," he murmured. The understanding dawning slowly. "Exactly. And that's why she found so many at your house. The love you feel for her manifests through the gift she carries." That afternoon, as if the universe were conspiring to test this theory, something happened that confirmed Hope's words dramatically. Reginald had finally accepted his lawyer's advice and decided to make one last attempt to convince the Smiths to accept a financial settlement and give up any claim on the family company. He arranged a formal meeting in his private office, an intimidating environment designed to impress and pressure. Robert, Carla, and Professor Martin attended, accompanied by a lawyer they had hired. "Gentlemen," Reginald began, "I am here to make a final proposal. I am prepared to offer each of you the sum of $200,000 in exchange for the complete renunciation of any right to the Kendrick family estate." It was a significant sum for people of lower middle class, enough to change their lives substantially. "It's a generous offer," admitted the Smith's lawyer. "And non-negotiable," Reginald added. "It's this, or we face a legal battle that could last for years and cost a fortune for everyone." Robert, Carla, and Professor Martin looked at each other. The temptation was evident on their faces. "Can we have some time to think?" asked Carla. "Until tomorrow," said Reginald. "After that, the offer is off the table." When they left the office, Reginald smiled to himself. He was confident he had found a solution to the problem. $200,000 for each was expensive, but much less than losing control of the company. But that night, something unexpected happened. Lily woke up in the middle of the night, agitated and crying. Marlene ran to her room and found her sitting up in bed, trembling. "What is it, sweetie? Did you have a nightmare?" "I dreamed that everyone went away and left me alone again," Lily sobbed. "I dreamed that Uncle Reginald sent everyone away and I was left with just the puppies." Marlene hugged the girl, trying to calm her. "It was just a bad dream. No one is going to leave you alone. Promise? I promise." But the words sounded hollow even to Marlene, because deep down, she knew that Lily's nightmare could become a reality. If the Smiths accepted Reginald's offer and disappeared, and if something happened to Hope, which seemed increasingly imminent, Lily could indeed be isolated in a family that was still divided about fully accepting her. The next morning, the Smiths' answer arrived in a way no one expected. Instead of calling or sending a representative, the three of them appeared in person at Walter's house, bringing a decision that would change everything once more. Robert, Carla, and Professor Martin arrived at Walter's house on a Saturday morning with determined expressions that indicated they had made an important decision. Lily was in the yard playing with her dogs when she saw them arrive, and she ran to hug Carla, who had become her favorite cousin. "Did you come to play with me today?" she asked cheerfully. "We came to talk to your uncles about some important things," said Carla, stroking the girl's curly hair. "But we can play later." Walter, Marlene, and Oswald gathered in the living room, while Hope rested in a nearby armchair. Her appearance was visibly more fragile, but she had insisted on participating in the conversation. "We've made our decision about Reginald's proposal," Professor Martin announced bluntly. "And," asked Oswald, visibly tense. "We're not going to accept it," Robert said firmly. The silence that followed was charged with meaning. Oswald seemed to deflate with relief, while Walter felt a mixture of pride and concern. "May I ask why?" said Walter. "It was a substantial amount. Because we didn't come here for money," Carla explained. "We came looking for our family, and after meeting Lily, after understanding what Mrs. Hope went through to protect her, we realized there are things more important than money. Besides," added Professor Martin, "accepting that offer would be the same as validating the exclusion our family has suffered for decades. It would be saying that we are willing to be bought and silenced again." Hope smiled faintly, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "You are worthy of the Kendrick name. John Peter would be proud." "But this means the legal battle will continue," Oswald warned, "and it could be long and costly for everyone." "Not necessarily," said Robert. "We have an alternative proposal." "What proposal?" "We want to form a real family partnership. Not to fight over pieces of the company, but to work together to expand the family's business." Walter leaned forward, interested. "What do you mean?" Professor Martin took a folder of documents from his bag. "We spent the week researching Kendrick mining and the gemstone market in general. We discovered opportunities you may not have considered." "What kind of opportunities?" "Mining tourism," Carla said excitedly. "Environmental education, experiences for families. Robert has mechanical knowledge that can help modernize equipment. I understand retail and marketing. And Martin has experience in education that can be applied to community programs." "You want to work for the company?" asked Oswald, surprised. "We want to help the company grow in a way that benefits not only the family, but the entire community," explained Robert. "Instead of fighting over the division of what already exists, we want to help create something bigger." The proposal caught everyone by surprise. For weeks, the concern had been about how to protect the existing assets. The idea of using the arrival of new family members as an opportunity to expand the business was something no one had considered. "It's an interesting idea," Walter admitted, "but it would require a lot of planning, investment, and mutual trust," completed Professor Martin, "which brings us to the main point of our proposal." "Which is?" "We want Lily to be the center of all this, not as a symbol or a mascot, but as the reason we are all working together." Carla spoke up. "This girl has been through traumas no child should have to endure. She deserves not only a family, but a safe and prosperous future. We want to build something that guarantees that for her, and for other children who may come," added Robert. "Professor Martin is single. I'm starting to date someone seriously. And Carla, well, who knows what the future holds." Hope, who had listened to everything in silence, finally spoke with a weak but firm voice. "This is what John Peter would have wanted. Not division, but unity. Not competition, but collaboration." At that moment, Lily ran into the room, interrupting the adults' serious conversation. "Guys, come see. I found a giant stone in the garden. Everyone got up and followed her to the yard, where she had dug a hole near the fence separating the property from the neighboring lot. At the bottom of the hole shone an amethyst the size of a clenched fist, the largest any of them had ever seen. "My God," Walter whispered, "where did you learn to dig like that?" "The little stone taught me," Lily said naturally. "It was singing very loudly today." Professor Martin bent down to examine the stone more closely. "Lily, this ability you have, has it always worked like this?" "As long as I can remember. Grandma Elsie said it was because the little stones know I take good care of them." Carla looked around the yard, thoughtful. "Walter, have you ever had a geological survey of this property done?" "No." "Why?" "Because if Lily is finding commercial quality amethysts buried in a residential backyard, there might be an unexplored mineral vein running under this area. The possibility opened up entirely new prospects. If there really was a deposit on the Kendricks residential property, it could represent a source of resources completely independent of the traditional mine. We can hire a geologist," suggested Robert. "Do a full study. And if we find something," asked Oswald, "then we have the opportunity to start a completely new family venture," said Professor Martin. "Something that belongs equally to all of us, without historical disputes or resentments." Hope, leaning on her cane, watched Lily play with the giant amethyst she had found. "You don't see it yet, do you?" "See what, Mrs. Hope?" asked Walter. "Lily isn't just finding stones. She's showing where our family can grow and prosper together. Every stone she finds is a sign that we are on the right path." That afternoon, while the adults discussed the practical details of the new partnership proposal, Lily approached Hope, who was resting on the porch. "Grandma Elsie, you're getting weaker every day." Hope smiled sadly. "It's true, my warrior. But I'm not sad about it. Why not? Because now I know you have a big family that loves you, and that was all I wanted to achieve before." "Before I go to meet your great-grandfather, John Peter," Lily thought for a moment. "Are you going to the same place my mummy went?" "I am, yes." "Then can you tell her that I'm okay, that I found a family that loves me?" "I'll tell her everything. My dear, I'll tell her that you became exactly the special girl I always knew you would be." That night, after all the visitors had left and Lily had fallen asleep, Walter and Marlene talked about the radical changes happening in their lives. "Are you scared by all of this?" she asked. "Scared and excited at the same time," Walter admitted. 2 months ago, our biggest worry was deciding where to go on vacation. Now we're talking about restructuring the entire family company and forming a partnership with people we didn't even know. And how do you feel about it?" Walter looked out the bedroom window, seeing the yard where Lily had found so many amethysts, where his life had changed completely since that rainy night. "I feel like I finally understand what it means to be a real family. It's not about blood or money or old traditions. It's about choosing to love and protect each other." "And Reginald? He won't accept this new partnership easily. Reginald will have to choose between being part of something bigger or being stuck in the past. But the decision is his." The next morning, that decision was forced when Reginald appeared at the door, accompanied by 2 lawyers and clearly furious. "I heard the Smiths rejected my offer," he said, without preamble. "And now they're talking about forming a partnership. Have you all gone mad?" "Reginald, come in and let's talk civilly," said Walter. "There's nothing to talk about. You're handing over the family's assets to strangers." "They're not strangers. They're family. They're opportunists who appeared overnight." It was then that Lily, who was having breakfast in the kitchen, heard the shouting and came out to see what was happening. When she saw the agitated Reginald, she hid behind Marlene, clearly frightened. "Uncle Reginald," she said in a small voice, "why are you yelling?" Reginald looked at the girl, and for a moment his expression softened slightly, but then he hardened again. "Because your presence here is destroying this family, girl." The cruel words hit Lily like a slap in the face. She started to cry, not just from fear, but from a deep pain of rejection that she knew all too well. Reginald's cruel words echoed through the house like a poison that contaminates everything around it. Lily stopped crying abruptly and looked at him with an expression of frightening maturity for a 4-year-old. "I'm not destroying anything," she said in a firm voice, surprising everyone. "I just wanted to have a family. But if you don't want me here, I can leave." "Lily," exclaimed Marlene, crouching to hug the girl, "you're not going anywhere. This is your home." But the damage was done. Walter saw something extinguish in Lily's eyes, a light of hope that had been nurtured for weeks and had just been brutally snuffed out by her cousin's words. "Reginald," Walter said with a coldness that made everyone in the room shiver, "I want you to leave my house right now. Walter, we need to sort this out." "Now!" Walter shouted, completely losing his patience. "And if I see you near this child again, if I hear you speak to her that way again, I will forget that we are related." Reginald backed away, clearly frightened by his cousin's fury. He muttered something about lawyers and legal consequences before leaving hastily with his companions. But the silence that remained was worse than the screams. Lily had withdrawn into herself, hugging Bingo and Star as if they were her only protection in the world. Marlene tried to talk to her, but the girl just shook her head and whispered, "I want to be alone." The situation worsened when Hope, who had witnessed the entire scene from her wheelchair, had a respiratory crisis triggered by the emotional stress. Walter had to call an ambulance, and she was hospitalized in serious condition. "Doctor, what's the situation?" Walter asked Dr. Morris at the hospital. "Mr. Walter, Mrs. Hope's system is extremely fragile. This crisis may have significantly accelerated the process. I'm being honest. These may be her last days. Can she have visitors?" "She can, but I recommend it be brief and that you prepare to say goodbye." When they returned home, they found Lily in the yard, digging frantically with her small hands. There was dirt under her nails, dried tears on her face, and a desperate determination in her movements. "Lily, what are you doing?" Marlene asked, alarmed. "Looking for a special stone to make Grandma Elsie better," she replied without stopping her digging. "There has to be a stone that heals people. There has to be." Walter knelt beside the girl, holding her small, dirt-caked hands. "Lily, sweetie, that's not how it works. The little stones are special, but they don't cure illnesses. But they do magic. They brought me to you. They brought our family together. It's true, they did that. But Grandma Elsie is very sick, and sometimes not even magic can fix some things." It was then that Lily completely broke down, crying with a pain that was too big for her little heart. "Everyone I love goes away. My mommy went away. Now Grandma Elsie is going away. And Uncle Reginald said I'm destroying everything." Marlene picked the girl up, feeling her own heart break. "My dear, you're not destroying anything. You're the best thing that's happened to this family in years. But Uncle Reginald is wrong," Walter said firmly, "and I'm going to make sure he understands that." That night, something happened that completely changed the perspective of the situation. Carla, Robert, and Professor Martin appeared at the door unannounced, carrying bags of food and a determination that surprised everyone. "We heard what happened," Carla said without preamble, "and we came to stay here with you." "Stay how?" asked Walter. "For as long as it takes," Robert answered. "Lily needs to know she has a family that won't abandon her, especially now that Mrs. Hope is in the hospital." Professor Martin crouched in front of Lily, who was sitting on the sofa wrapped in a blanket. "Lily, do you remember what I told you about families?" The girl shook her head. "I said that the best families are the ones we choose, not necessarily the ones we're born into. And we choose you. Forever, even if I don't find any more magic stones. Even if you never find another stone in your life," Carla confirmed, sitting next to her, "because you're special, because of who you are, not because of what you do." Over the next few days, the three Smiths practically moved into Walter's house. Carla took a vacation from work. Robert temporarily closed his shop, and Professor Martin rearranged his classes to be more present. They took turns caring for Lily, visiting Hope at the hospital, and providing emotional support to each other. It was during one of these hospital visits that a moment of devastating beauty occurred. Hope was conscious, but visibly weaker. When she saw Lily enter the room, her eyes lit up one last time. "My little warrior," she whispered, "come here, close to Grandma." Lily approached the bed, holding a drawing she had made. It was a picture of the whole family together. Walter, Marlene herself, Hope, Robert, Carla, Professor Martin, and even Reginald. Because, as she explained, families have nice people and grumpy people, but they're still family. "It's beautiful," said Hope, stroking the paper. "Can I keep it?" "You can. I made it especially for you." Hope looked around the room, seeing all the faces that had become dear during those last months. "I want you to promise me something." "Anything," said Walter. "Promise me you'll take care of each other. Promise you won't let fear or greed destroy what we've built together." "We promise," said Professor Martin, speaking for everyone. "And promise you'll tell Lily all the family stories, the beautiful ones and the sad ones, so she knows where she came from and can choose where she wants to go." "We'll tell her everything," Carla promised. Hope closed her eyes, an expression of peace finally settling on her face. "John Peter," she whispered, "I'm coming, and I brought our family back home." She passed away silently the following dawn, surrounded by people who loved her. Lily woke up knowing instinctively that something had changed, even before anyone told her the news. "Did Grandma Elsie go to meet my mommy?" she asked, when Marlene explained what had happened. "She did, my dear. And they're together now, watching over you from a special place. Can they see me from there?" "Always." Hope's funeral was a revelation for all of Stone Creek. Not only the Kendricks attended, but dozens of people she had helped during the years she lived quietly in the city. Maids she had taught to read, street children she secretly fed, lonely elderly people she kept company. "I didn't know she did all that," Mrs. Eleanor murmured to Walter during the ceremony. "She spent decades caring for other people, even after being rejected by her own family. That's what unconditional love means." It was during the funeral that something unexpected happened. Reginald appeared, visibly embarrassed and with flowers in hand. He approached Lily, who was sitting between Walter and Carla. "Lily," he said with a hesitant voice, "can I talk to you?" The girl looked at him with those big, serious eyes, but nodded yes. "I wanted to apologize for what I said the other day. It was very ugly of me, and you didn't deserve to hear that." "Why did you say it then?" The child's direct question caught him off guard. Because I was afraid. Afraid that things would change too much and I wouldn't know how to handle it." "And are you still afraid now?" Reginald looked around, seeing the whole family gathered, seeing how they all supported each other in that difficult moment. "Now I'm afraid of losing you all because of the fear I had before." Lily thought for a moment, with that seriousness that always surprised adults. Then she held out her small hand to him. "Uncle Reginald, do you want to be part of our real family? Not the family of papers and money, but the family of the heart?" The simple and profound question made Reginald cry for the first time in years. "Yes," he said, taking the girl's hand. "I want to very much." At that moment, even amidst the sadness of saying goodbye to Hope, Lily smiled. Because finally, at 4 years old, and after a journey full of pain and discovery, she hadn't just found a family, she had created one. 6 months after Hope's funeral, the Kendricks' lives had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The geological survey of Walter's backyard had confirmed their suspicions. There was a small but valuable vein of amethysts running beneath the property, exactly where Lily used to find the stones. It's scientifically impossible to explain, the hired geologist, Dr. Fernando Rock, had said. These amethysts are in formations that should be meters deep, but they appear just inches from the surface, as if something were pushing them up. Something like what? Walter had asked. Natural tectonic movements, perhaps? Or he had paused, clearly uncomfortable, or the girl really has a gift that science can't yet explain. The discovery of the mineral vein had solved many of the family's practical problems. Instead of fighting over the division of existing assets, they now had a new and independent source of revenue. Walter, Robert, Carla, Professor Martin, and even Reginald had formed an equitable partnership, with Lily as the main beneficiary of a trust fund that would secure her education and future. But the most important changes were not financial. Carla had moved permanently to Stone Creek, buying a small house 2 blocks from Walter's. She had quit her job at the clothing store and now managed the commercial side of the new family business, specializing in selling amethysts to collectors and luxury jewelers. "Aunt Carla, are you going to live here forever?" Lily asked one afternoon as they arranged the most beautiful stones in a special display case. "Forever, little one. Or at least as long as you want an annoying aunt around. I'll always want you. You teach me things no one else knows." "Like what?" "How to braid hair, how to bake cookies without burning them, and how to talk to people when they're sad." Carla smiled, her heart warming. Over the last few months, she had discovered that caring for Lily filled a void in her life she didn't even know she had. The girl had become not just her niece, but almost a daughter of her heart. Robert had kept his auto shop, but now also provided maintenance services for the family's mining company. His practical experience had proved invaluable for modernizing old equipment and improving operational efficiency. "Uncle Robert," Lily said during one of her visits to the shop, "can you teach me how to fix things?" "Of course, little one. What do you want to learn to fix?" "Broken hearts." The answer took Robert by surprise. "What do you mean?" "Uncle Reginald still gets sad sometimes. I see it in his eyes. I want to learn how to fix his sadness." "Lily, some things can't be fixed with tools. They're fixed with time and love. Then I'll give him lots of love and wait for the right time." Professor Martin had perhaps transformed the most. Inspired by the family's story and Lily's exceptional intelligence, he had developed an innovative educational project, a mining school for children where they would learn about geology, local history, and environmental preservation through hands-on activities. The idea, he explained to visitors interested in the project, is to use children's natural fascination with precious stones as a gateway to broader learning about science and sustainability. Lily had become the project's first student, and her ability to locate amethysts was now being studied by university researchers who came from various cities to understand the phenomenon. "Uncle Martin," she asked during one of these study sessions, "why do adults always want to understand everything? Can't it just be magic?" "It can be magic, yes," he replied, smiling. "But sometimes understanding the magic helps us make it happen for more people." "Oh, so I'll teach other kids how to talk to the little stones?" "If you want to, of course." Reginald's transformation had been perhaps the most surprising of all. The man who had rejected Lily so cruelly months ago was now one of her greatest protectors. He'd sold some of his own assets to invest in the new family partnership and spent at least one afternoon a week playing with the girl. "Uncle Reginald," Lily said one of these afternoons as they looked for amethysts in the yard, "are you still afraid of me?" "No, little one. Now I'm afraid of not being good enough for you." "Why?" "Because you are very special, and it took me a long time to understand that. But you understand now, right? I do, and I'm trying to be a better person to deserve to be your uncle." Lily stopped digging and looked at him with that seriousness that always impressed the adults. "Uncle Reginald, you don't have to deserve it. You just have to love me. Love isn't earned, it's given." The child's words touched Reginald deeply, reminding him that he had learned more about love and family in the past few months than in his entire life before. Mrs. Eleanor, Aunt Beatrice, and Aunt Carmen had also undergone their own transformations. The three elderly ladies now took turns picking Lily up from school, taking her on outings, and most importantly, telling her family stories that had been kept secret for decades. "Grandma Eleanor," Lily said one afternoon, sitting on her great-grandmother's lap as she told her about the early days of the mine, "do you miss the time when I didn't exist? My dear, now that you exist, I can't imagine what our life was like before. It's as if you were always here and we just didn't know where to look. But not everything had been easy." Lily still had occasional nightmares about abandonment, moments of anxiety when an important adult was late coming home, and a tendency to blame herself when something went wrong in the family. "It's normal," Dr. Patricia Mendez, the child psychologist who saw Lily weekly, had explained. "Children who have experienced abandonment trauma take time to develop complete trust. The important thing is to maintain consistency and patience." "How long?" Marlene had asked. "It could be years. It could be a lifetime on some level. But every day of love and stability builds a stronger foundation." It was during one of these sessions that Dr. Patricia made an observation that caught everyone's attention. Lily shows an exceptional capacity for forgiveness and adaptation for someone who has faced the traumas she has. It's almost as if she has an innate wisdom about human relationships. "What do you mean?" asked Walter. "She can see goodness in people who are acting badly, as she did with Reginald. She instinctively understands that bad behaviors often come from pain or fear. It's a very rare emotional skill." "Is it a gift?" asked Marlene. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it's the result of learning very early on that survival depends on understanding the emotions of those around you. Regardless of its origin, this ability of Lily's had become the heart of the new family dynamic. When there were tensions between the adults, and there still were, occasionally it was often she who found ways to restore harmony. A striking example occurred when Oswald, who had remained more distant from the new family partnership, expressed concerns about the financial sustainability of the new ventures. "It's not that I'm against it," he explained during a tense family meeting, "but we are investing a lot of money in projects that may not yield a return." The discussion was getting heated when Lily, who was playing quietly in the corner of the room, approached Oswald with a drawing. "Uncle Oswald, I made this for you." The drawing showed the whole family working together in a mine, with Oswald clearly identified as the head of security, a role she had invented for him. "Why did you draw me as the head of security?" he asked, touched by the gesture. "Because you always worry about whether everyone will be okay. It's your way of taking care of the family." The girl's simple but profound observation completely changed the tone of the discussion. Oswald realized that his financial concerns were, in fact, a way of showing care, and the other family members began to see his objections as valuable contributions to planning, not as obstacles. Gradually, the new family configuration found its rhythm. Lily turned 5, surrounded by more love and stability than she had ever imagined possible. Her ability to find amethysts continued to surprise experts, but for her it had become something natural, like knowing when she was hungry or sleepy. Lily, a journalist who came to do a story on the family, asked, "How do you know where the stones are?" "They tell me," she replied simply. "How do they tell you?" "By singing. Each little stone has a different song. The prettiest ones sing the loudest. And can you always hear them?" "Not always. Only when I'm happy and surrounded by people who love me. When I'm sad or scared, the little stones get quiet." The answer was published in the local newspaper and spread to national media, turning Lily into a small regional celebrity. But the family had decided to protect her privacy, limiting interviews and keeping her school and family routine as normal as possible. She's had enough changes for a lifetime, Walter had told a persistent reporter. Now she just needs to be a child. And that's exactly what Lily was doing. Being a child, but a child who had learned early on that family is not about perfection, but about choosing to love even when it's difficult. A year and a half after that rainy night that changed everything, Stone Creek was preparing for its traditional winter festival. This year, however, there was something special in the air. The Kendricks would be participating for the first time as a united family, presenting the educational project that had been born from the union of new and old family members. Lily, now 5.5, had insisted on being part of the event's organization. She wanted to teach other children how to talk to the little stones. She called her special ability. What had started as a game had turned into a serious educational project, with children from local schools learning about geology, history, and environmental preservation. "Uncle Martin," she said one morning as they prepared materials for the festival, "do you think all kids can hear the little stones singing?" "I don't know, little one. But I think all kids can learn to pay attention to the world around them, and that's already a kind of magic. So we're going to teach them to pay attention." Exactly. The family's booth at the festival had been set up in a central area, near the main stage. It was a miniature recreation of an amethyst mine, where children could dig through special sand and find small stones that had been purposely buried. Lily had personally chosen each of the amethysts used in the activity. "They have to be happy," she had explained to Carla while they selected the stones. "Sad little stones don't make children smile." "And how do you know if a stone is happy?" asked Carla, still amazed at the unique way the girl perceived the world. By their glow, happy little stones shine from the inside out, even in the dark. On the day of the festival, the Kendricks booth quickly became the most popular spot at the event. Dozens of children crowded to participate in the magic dig, and Lily had fun helping each one find their special stone. "This one is yours," she would say to a shy 7-year-old girl, handing her a small purple amethyst. "It was waiting for you." "How do you know?" the girl asked. "Because it stopped singing when you got close. That means it has already chosen you as its owner." Dr. Patricia Mendez, who had come to accompany Lily during the event, watched everything with professional fascination. "It's extraordinary," she commented to Walter. "She has turned her special gift into a way to connect other children with nature and imagination. And most importantly," added Marlene, "she is genuinely happy. There's no longer that shadow of fear in her eyes." It was true. In recent months, Lily had transformed into a vibrant and confident child. She still had moments of melancholy, especially when she remembered hope, but she had developed a remarkable ability to process her emotions and find support in her family. During the festival, something unexpected happened. A man of about 40 approached the booth, watching Lily work with the children. There was something familiar in his appearance, the same dark, curly hair, the same facial structure. "Excuse me," he said to Walter. "I'm Marcus Santos. I think we're related." Walter felt his heart race. "Related how?" "I'm the great-grandson of Joseph Peter Smith, John Peter's brother. I learned about the family's story through the newspapers and came to meet you. It was another descendant they didn't even know existed." Robert, Carla, and Professor Martin approached, equally surprised. "How many of us are there?" asked Robert. "From what I could find out, at least 8 cousins of different ages, all descendants of Joseph Peter, and there are probably more who don't even know their origin. The revelation could have caused anxiety, as it had months ago. But now, the family's reaction was completely different." "Great!" exclaimed Carla. "The more people to love Lily, the better. And more people to help with the family projects," added Professor Martin. Marcus seemed surprised by the receptiveness. "You're not worried about inheritance issues?" "The most important inheritance we've already found," said Walter, looking at Lily, who was playing cheerfully with the children. "We'll figure out the rest by talking." It was at that moment that something happened that definitively sealed the fate of the new Kendrick family. A girl of about 6, who had participated in the dig earlier, came running back to the booth with tears in her eyes. "Miss Lily," she cried, "I lost my little stone. It fell somewhere and now I can't find it." Lily stopped what she was doing and knelt to the girl's level. "Don't be sad. We'll look for it together. But there are so many people here. How are we going to find a tiny stone in the middle of all these people?" Lily smiled and held the girl's hand. "Come with me. I'll teach you a secret." They walked through the festival area, with Lily stopping occasionally and closing her eyes, as if listening to something. Finally, she headed to an area near the main stage and began searching among the chairs. "Here," she said, picking up the small amethyst that had rolled under a chair. It was singing very quietly, but I could hear it. The girl hugged Lily tightly. "Thank you. You really are magic." The whole family had watched the scene, and there was something deeply symbolic about it. Lily had used her gift not to show off or to gain something, but simply to help a child who was suffering. She was exactly the kind of person Hope had dreamed she would become. At the end of the festival, as they were dismantling the booth, Marcus approached Lily for the first time. "Hi," he said shyly. "I'm your cousin Marcus. Can I get to know you better?" Lily studied him with that piercing gaze she used to assess people. After a moment, she smiled. "You have eyes like mine, and you smell like a good person." "What do you mean I smell like a good person?" "Good people smell like affection and the will to help. Bad people smell like sadness and anger." Marcus laughed, charmed by the girl's unique perspective. "And can I be part of your family?" "Of course. But first you have to meet Bingo and Star. If they like you, then you can stay." The simplicity with which Lily accepted new members into the family contrasted sharply with the fears and resistance the adults had faced at the beginning. To her, family was something that grew naturally, like a plant gaining new branches. That night, at home, after an exhausting but gratifying day, the family gathered for dinner. It was a large table now, with Walter, Marlene, Lily, Carla, Robert, Professor Martin, Reginald, and even Oswald, who had finally fully accepted the new family arrangement. "Lily," said Walter, "do you remember what your life was like before you came here?" The girl thought for a moment, fiddling with the amethyst necklace that was now her most precious symbol. "I remember it was very lonely, and that I always wished I had a big family with lots of people who liked each other. But I thought it was just a dream. And now? Now I know that dreams can come true if you're brave and find the right people to dream with." Marlene wiped a tear from her eye. For all these months, she had watched Lily transform from a traumatized child into a confident and loving girl. But more than that, she had seen how Lily's presence had transformed all of them. "Do you know what impresses me most about you?" Carla said to Lily. "It's how you can see goodness in people, even when they're not being very nice. That's because everyone has goodness inside." Lily explained with that wisdom that always surprised the adults. Sometimes the goodness is hidden under sadness or fear, just like the little stones are hidden under the dirt. But it's always there, waiting for someone to discover it. Professor Martin smiled. "And you are very good at discovering hidden goodness. Grandma Elsie taught me. She said that all people have light inside them, but sometimes they forget where they put it. My job is to help them remember." At that moment, looking around the table full of beloved faces, Lily understood something important. Her journey hadn't just been about finding a family. It had been about learning that family is something you build every day, with love, patience, and the courage to accept that people can change and grow. "Can I ask you all a question?" she said suddenly. Of course, they all answered almost at the same time. "Do you think my mommy and Grandma Elsie are proud of me?" Walter stood up and picked her up. Lily, I am absolutely sure that they are not only proud, but overjoyed to see that you have found exactly what you needed. A family that loves you just the way you are. And that you also helped us find ourselves, added Reginald, because before you arrived, we didn't really know how to be a real family. That night, Lily fell asleep for the first time in her life with the absolute certainty that she would never be alone again. Her nightmares of abandonment had vanished, replaced by dreams where she flew over Stone Creek surrounded by all those who loved her. And in the backyard of the house, the buried amethysts shone a little brighter during the night, as if they were celebrating along with the girl who had turned a fragmented family into a constellation of unconditional love. The story had begun with the silent screams of a suffering child. It ended with the laughter of a girl surrounded by more love than she had ever dreamed possible. And somewhere between the suffering and the joy, a family had learned that the greatest riches are not those that are inherited, but those that are built together, one day at a time, with hands dirty with soil and hearts full of hope. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Let me know what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.